Welcome to Mother's Narrative Network. Before we begin, please like and subscribe. Reassure me, what's the worst thing your DCS have said in public? Whilst feeding DS2, 11 weeks, early this morning, DS1, 2.1 years, was watching the tweenies and the characters were pinching each other. He and I chatted about how pinching is naughty, etc. We went to the post office at lunchtime, where he proceeded to lie on the floor screeching, "Don't pinch me, mummy," at the top of his voice, because I had intervened in his attempts to empty a huge display of cotton reels. I obviously wasn't pinching him, and hopefully people could see that, but it sounded as if that is what I usually do. Reassure me that your DCS have said similarly embarrassing things. I wanted the ground to swallow me up, said, "I would never pinch you, sweetheart," and left as quickly as a toddler, 11-week-old and mum can do. I am just getting in the bloody pram, outside preschool, in front of assembled parents and teachers. Is that man having a baby? In a cafe, loudly, about a man sitting at the next table, "Mummy, I think I have another wormy coming out of my bum today," loudly, at soft play, we left. All of these are DD4, in the last few weeks. By the way, I didn't take my worm-infested child to soft play. She has been treated and is clear. However, getting worms was the most thrilling thing that has happened to her since I crashed the car on the nursery school gates. So she won't let it go. When my friend was about 6, he fell over and cracked his head open on a fireplace. When at the hospital the doctor asked him, "Gosh, how did you do that?" and he replied, "Daddy pushed me." Apparently his dad wasn't even home when it happened. Friend's mum was mortified and feared she would have social services knocking any minute. My toddler shouted on a train, "Look at the lambs in the field, you cut off their heads and peel off their skin, don't you, mummy?" WTF. This was 6 years ago and I still cringe, and no, I don't cut lambs' heads off, or peel their skin for that matter. Mummy said a bad word. Mummy said shush it. DH was tickling DD on the tummy earlier while we were in the park. A nice lady said that it looked like fun. DD, who is 2.11, shrugged and said yes, usually he punches me. He does no such thing. She also chirruped in the swimming pool family changing room a couple of months ago, "What a lovely big willy you have, Daddy." I'm going to stop taking her out, I think. DD1 asked a somewhat portly lady to please excuse her so she could get past. Then she came over to me and said, "Mummy, I said excuse me to that lady." "Yes you did, DD1, says I, feeling very proud of my well-mannered daughter. "Mummy, I said excuse me," and she moved her big fat bottom. In a post office queue, "Mummy, that lady's got a mustache, just like Daddy's." Also in a PO queue, my 3-year-old said to a 30-something man in front of us, who was mostly bald and graying where left, "Hello, Grandad." Mummy dropped DD2 in the river, DD1 to her preschool teacher, on her first day. Not the strap, Mummy, no, DD2, as I tried to strap her into her pushchair in Waitrose. She had just tried to leg it out of the door into the road. "Mummy, you did a big smelly poo," DD2 on leaving the toilet in lovely cafe, full of people, that we will sadly never return to. OMG, you think that's bad, OP. How's this, Mummy WHY, have you got a fat hairy mini? Mini being our word for girls' bits. In Waitrose. Maybe if we'd been slumming it with the proles in Asda it wouldn't have been so bad. In a crowd, having just used a public toilet, DD, then 9, asked in a loud voice, "It says in that toilet back there that Kirsty Blaine is a gunt. What's a gunt? And who is she?" Ground. Swallow. Me? Up please. OP, you are lucky. MYDS recently told his grandparents, after being asked how the drive down was. "Fine, but there was a stupid wanger at the roundabout." Shock horror, as I never swear, apart from when somebody is about to smash into my car. So now wanger is a favorite word of ours. Then there was the other day, when he began to point out plump people, after being told it's not nice to call people fat. Not my DC, but my sister, aged 5 at the time, said to her teacher, "My mummy doesn't like your haircut." Didi mortified me at the weekend. We were in Maxid's, and a family of Chinese appearance walked in. She stands on her chair and points at them. Didi, incredibly loudly, "Mummy, those people are not from our country." Me, Didi, "Don't point, it's rude." Didi, with volume increase, "But mummy, they are not from England, they are not from here." Me, trying not to combust with embarrassment, "SSH, it's rude to point, of course they are from here." Didi, "No, mummy, they're not from here, look at them, they're not English, they look different. Look at how their eyes are different." Me. I eventually got her to lower her voice, and it transpired that she has been doing a project in school about where your family originally comes from, and as one of her classmates is of Chinese origin, she was simply trying to show off her newfound knowledge of where this other family, who either didn't notice or thankfully decided to ignore the mini-Nick Griffin ranting at them, originated from. God, I wanted the floor to open and swallow me up. She has also loudly argued the toss with me on a train that the lady cleaner in our carriage was actually a man, said lady had V. short Irish mammy haircut, and was V. tall and thin, much to my mortification. I've posted this before on these threads. DS1, about 2, trip to Bird World. Granny bought him 2 stuffed birds, painstakingly advised him at length that they were a blackbird and a cockatoo. Next day, shopping in Croydon, new favorite toys along for the day, mistakenly left the cockatoo in the car. Cue frantic dash down main shopping parade back to car park, with DS1 shouting and screaming at top of his lungs, "Blackbird want co PCK, Blackbird want co-ok." When I was little, about 3ish I think, my young auntie taught me to say slap head. On the bus one day with my mam, a bald man sat down in front of us. I promptly shouted at the top of my lungs, "Slap head," and tapped him on the head. Needless to say, mam was mortified. DS, learning to read, went through a phase of sounding out any and every word he could see standing in queue at Boots, and he spots something in the basket of chap in front that catches his eye. D-U-R-E-X-D-U-R. "Mummy, what does that say? Is it Drex?" "What's Drex? Is it sweets in that box? Can I have some please?" Red-faced bloke in front and stifled sniggers from people behind. Oh, and then questioning me as to why I needed to buy Anusol loudly. Didi has verbal dyspraxia, so I forget I have a parrot that very occasionally repeats what I say with amazing clarity. I so wish that the last time she bumped her head I didn't say, "Oh, please don't make me send you to school with another black eye, it sounds so great." Every time she bumps herself she wails, "Please mummy, don't send me to school with another black eye." Most of what she says is unintelligible, but why oh why is this clear as day? I've just remembered that my own brother embarrassed my mum at a chiropodist by farting and then saying, "Mummy," as if it were her who had done it. I feel reassured by the way, and think post offices are clearly places to avoid with toddlers in tow. Didi, aged about 2, at dinner table when on holiday in a big group of families. She was chatting in nonsense words to a friendly teenager whom we knew slightly. He says, "Oh, you are such a funky monkey," to her. She thinks carefully, then says clear as a bell, "You are a monkey gunt." A word we have never used and she has never heard. PMSL, as did DH, and luckily all other families who were there. Poor teenager was mortified though. DS1, aged about 3, in middle of local post office. "Mummy, look at the big fat man. Why does he have so many chins?" DS2, aged about 2, in checkout queue at our local Asda. "Poo smelly man," complete with pointing to the rather fragrant older gentleman standing in front of us in the queue. In a busy cafe when a very obese man walked past us, DS4 laughed and shouted out, "Mummy, look at that man, he's huge. How did he get in here?" Shush. Followed by, "Look, he's going to the toilet. How is he going to fit on the seats?" He did have a point, but he is very loud and clear. I can think of loads. I'm pregnant and my nipples are quite dark now. We were in the swimming pool changing room. DD2, 6, Mammy, why are your boobies black now? Me SSHHH, it's for when I feed the baby. DD2, does it come out of your tuppence? DD1, 11, it's actually called a vagina. DD2, a vagina. Me SSHHHHHHHHHH. DD2, vagina, ha 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 ha. I waited a little while before emerging from the cubicle. DD2 informed me loudly in the middle of a shop the other day that she never wanted me to die. I said, oh, that's lovely, darling. She said, I never want anyone to die. Oh, isn't she cute? Looks from fellow shoppers. Apart from fat people, because they eat too much. My mum tells me that we had been learning about people getting out and dying one day, and the following day I piped up very loudly on a bus full of older people, all these people are going to die soon, aren't they? I'm dithering between two occasions. When DS was 3 he had a lot of problems putting his pants the right way around. So every morning we had the endless argument to get them to wear them the right way. Then one day was in an overcrowded fitting room when DS says, DS, Mum, you have your pants the other way around. Me, no, I don't. DS, yes you do. Me, no I don't, can we talk of other thing? DS, you do. It went on for what felt like a lifetime. The other occasion was when he was 5 and one day, again fully surrounded by people in a Christmas ornament store, DS comes, gives me a hug and says, Mum, I don't care if you slept with hundreds of men, I love you. Obviously, I was on the phone immediately asking my ex if he had been using Mama MIA as a babysitting device. Not mine, thankfully, but I was in a big MFI type place with a friend and her 2 kids, helping her choose a kitchen. She took her DS, who must have been about 3, into the ladies with her, and I took her older DD across to the other side of the shop to look at some girly bedroom displays. A couple of minutes later the toilet doors opened and her DS absolutely bellowed across the shop at me in a voice that would have put Brian Blessed to shame. Mummy just did a great big poo in there and it stank. She bought her kitchen somewhere else. DS 8. To a mother in the schoolyard as reported by my friend, no, your son can't come to our house again, because my mummy wouldn't like it. Last time he came she told me to never ask for him to play again. He's rude and has no table manners, but that's not really his fault, because he must have learnt it from you. My DD1 sat on the loo in the men's toilets, at age about 20 months, out with DH on her own, and sang a song of her own making, which said something like, I wee-ish, I hard a wee-I-I-yili. DH said he had to wait, until he was sure there was no one there until he opened the cubicle door. DD1. In Gatwick. Waiting on flight to North Africa. Group of Muslim ladies with headscarves. Mummy. Look at those silly girls, they are playing hide and seek, but they are doing it wrong. One of you has to count. They are silly, aren't they, Mummy? On the flight. Mummy, that man in front did a fartpants. But he did and it smells. Blur. Yuck. 4-hour flight. This is why we don't go on holiday. Oh, and she called her sister a cheeky wee bitch the other day in Tesco. God know where that came from. Thank you for watching Mother's Narrative Network. Please like, comment, and subscribe before watching these other videos. Welcome to Mother's Narrative Network. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more daily uploads. Hope you enjoy today's video. Reassure me, what's the worst thing your DCS have said in public? Part 2. DS used to shout help loudly and repeatedly as I pushed him around town. DD2 was walking down the aisle at Tesco behind a larger lady, top of voice wow. Wide load ahead. Back up and reversed up the aisle beeping like a lorry. LOL at these. My Dee, when she was 2, saw an old lady hobbling along and shouted to me, "She'll be dead soon, won't she?" We were out having lunch and I said to Dee, 3, "Do you think Daddy will be out in the garden putting the plants in?" "No, silly," she replied loudly, "he'll be sitting on his arse on his computer again." She was right, by the way. When giving a rather prim ex-head teacher friend of my mum's a lift in my car, my then 4-year-old Dee spied a police car and yelled, "Look out, Mum, here come the pigs." I still don't know where she picked that up. Then there was the time we were in the line waiting to go into nursery and DS2 again. I don't know why I am not grey-haired with the stress of looking after him, pipes up, "See Mrs. X, nursery teacher, well her husband is a murderer." All the parents looked up, and he continued, He murdered our dog. He chopped it up into little bits and stuck it in a big hole he'd dug on the golf course. You know, the big golf course in St. Andrews." Of course none of it was true. Mrs. XSDH was a vet who'd had the sad job of putting our much-loved dog to sleep 4 weeks previously. Dee sitting in the car when another car hits my wing mirror. Man who hit it comes up to my car, and Dee asks him, "Man, are you the baby Jesus?" I just couldn't think why she had asked him this until the next time I was in a car incident and shouted, "Oh Jesus." Dee still talks about the day baby Jesus hit our car. DP took Dee 3, swimming and got mortified in the changing rooms, when everyone could hear her exclaiming loudly, "Daddy, you have a wobbly bottom." We were at one of those wooden parks and DS6 got a splinter in his hand. I was trying to remove it and he was screaming, "I want to live. I want to live," rather hysterically. DS4 always asks me rather loudly in public toilets if I'm having a wee or a poo, always a wee by the way, and when I'm finished says, "Good boy mammy." Last week, walking behind 2 women, DS4 said loudly, "I really like that lady's dress, and she has pretty shoes too." Said lady turned round and beamed at complimentary, cute, curly-haired small child. At which point, he pointed at her friend and said, "But I don't like yours so much as you have a big, fat bottom. Just lovely." DS3 pointed at me and sternly declared, in the loudest voice possible, "You're not my mother." Sainsbury's. When about 2ish still had trouble pronouncing L. Liked clocks though. Shopping center, "Mummy. Look at that big clock. I can see a big clock." Just think how much mortification you are all going to be able to cause when you retell these stories to your DCS girlfriends or boyfriends, or even better, in the speeches at their weddings. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I've told this story before, but we were at York Station when DS1 was about 3 or 4, and a man smoking a pipe sat down next to us. The conversation went as follows. DS1, "What is that in your mouth, man?" "Man, it's a pipe." DS1, "What are you doing with it, man?" "Man, I am smoking it." DS1, "You are going to die." That's when we ruled out a career in the diplomatic service for the lad. DD is 6, so we have plenty of opportunity for this sort of thing. The worst time was when we were in the supermarket, when she was about 4.5, and we were buying a 4-pack of beer for DH. Dee pipes up in her loudest voice, "Daddy like beer, doesn't he, Mummy?" To which I agreed. She says, "But sometimes it makes him a bit sick, doesn't it?" I was very embarrassed, and an old bloke walking past and who had OBV heard the whole exchange, just smiled and said, "Out of the mouth of babes, eh?" The worst thing is that Daddy was sick once on beer, but he'd come home from a stag do a bit worse for wear, been sick and woken her up with the noise. He can't be sick quietly. So he's not the complete pisshead this makes him out to be at all. DS1 was 2. DS2 was a baby. We were also renovating our house. Tries hard to recreate the stress we were under. Nursery teacher, "How was your weekend?" DS1, "We went to the Orange hardware store. That's B&Q, and Mummy said Daddy was a ducking arse." Nursery teacher, "Ooh, that's nice." DS aged 7 asking a sixth former if he had a girlfriend, to which the poor boy blushed and said no. DS then pipes up, "Go on, you can tell me. I bet you have a boyfriend instead." Poor lad didn't know where to put himself. Even better, in school age 4, when the teacher asks how do you tell someone to go away if they shouldn't be talking to you, DS you tell them to sod off. Teacher tells me she had to leave the room, she was laughing so much. DS aged 3, what on earth has that funny colored man done to his skin? DS aged 2 favorite reply, oh duck. Much embarrassment here. DS1 was about 4, his 15 on Monday, and we were in church one Sunday morning. He was sitting at the front with the Sunday school nursery class, and DH and I were about halfway up the aisle while my PIL was sitting up the back. The minister was standing in front of the Sunday school giving his children's talk, when DS gets off his seat, stands in front of the minister and shouts, "Mummy, I need a poo." The congregation roared with laughter while my MIL ran up the aisle to take DS out to the toilet. The minister was helpless for quite a while and his wife sat with her shoulders shaking for the rest of the service. DS has never been allowed to forget this one. Out for the day with 5-year-old DD and school friends. A group of ladies dressed in burqas walked past. Small girls start discussing the attire. Loudly and with great authority DD informs the other girls that those ladies are all lesbians, my mummy told me. Mummy had shown her photos of our Middle East holiday, including a lovely Lebanese lady tour guide. When my DS was in reception, I used to help out in his class one day a week. One day they had a supply teacher in, and after break she got out a book to read them a story. Before she did she told them a bit about the author and said, she was a granny when she wrote this book, to which one of the kids piped up, like you. DS is pretty non-verbal ATM, but he does say a few things, mostly car, tractor etc. However, one unfortunate phrase he has picked up is "wanna ride," as in would you like to go on the ride on toy. This morning we went shopping, and he chased an elderly gentleman through the shopping center yelling "wanna ride. Wanna ride," as the man was in an electric wheelchair. Oh goodness, I am weeping with laughter. DS, aged 5 at the time, local police representative comes to school, burglary comes up in conversation, policeman made comment about locking front doors and keeping safe. DS pipes up with great authority, "You must lock the back door too and the windows." The policeman commented how sensible my son was, to which he responded, "Yeah, well the back windows are the easiest to jimmy open with a screwdriver, then mummy can boost you through the window to go and unlock the front door as long as the keys are there." We were locked out of our own house and my husband was away when this happened. Have since met the very nice policeman, who said he told everyone at the station about the junior master criminal. Oh, just remembered another one. DH took his van to go help a friend move some stuff, and took DS with him. DS must have been about 5. Friend gets in the van, and DS turns to friend and says, "Dad says you're a bloody pain in the arse, always wanting to use his van." DH just laughed and said, "I didn't say that." QDS, "Yes you did daddy, you said he was a pain and you were going to charge people for using your van." When out shopping with DS, 2.5, he amuses himself by farting very loudly, and the pointing at me saying, "Ha ha, mummy farted, charming child." Oh, that's reminded me of another police one. The community officers came to DD1's infant school to give a talk about their work. And the end, nobody asked any questions except DD1, who, after much thinking, piped up, "So, do you like donuts then?" I knew I shouldn't have let her watch The Simpsons. Not me, thankfully, but a dear friend. She had a clash with a form teacher, and became quite irate when discussing it with her DH that evening. It was an ongoing saga. She thought that DCs were out of earshot. The following day her DS told the teacher that his mummy thought that she'd had a really good thumping with the ugly stick. Not my DS thankfully, but when I was about 18 in pub with boyfriend. Boyfriend came back from toilets with massive grin on his face and said that little boy over there just turned round to his dad when we were both at the urinals and shouted really loudly, "Why has that man got a bigger willy than you, Dad? Why, Dad? Why, Dad, why aren't you answering me?" Cue lots of hysterical giggling by me and boyfriend and him trying to show me which man it was. I feel really sorry for the dad now that I have my own 3 monsters. Didi, about 5, spotted a woman suffering from dwarfism and said in a very loud voice, "Look at that little girl, Mummy. Hasn't she got very fat legs and the most enormous bottom?" I tried to drag her away and started to explain that the woman was in fact an adult, to which Didi replied, "Really? You could have fooled me." Another time my friend and I were driving into town with DS in the back seat of the car. A huge tipper truck came along the narrow country road, taking up both sides, not slowing down, and almost ran us off the road. I shouted, "You stupid bastard, you nearly killed us." Then another truck came straight after that, and DS said, "Ooh no, Mummy, 2 bastards." My friend nearly wet herself laughing. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was proud, because he added to 2. Part of me was because I try not to swear in front of the kids. So, I just said, "Good counting, darling." That is what my friend remembers most about my DS being a toddler. Haven't laughed so much for ages. Didi, 3, in the lift at the hospital, only the 2 of us and 1 other lady. Didi pipes up, "Is that what a scarecrow looks like, Mummy?" Needless to say, I got out of the left at the next level. The other day in M&S food hall, me, after we're done shopping, "What do you fancy doing?" Didi, 3, I want to go to the pub. I should point out that the village pub has a lovely family garden, and that we sometimes take the kids there on a Saturday tea time. I'm not some crazy booze hound dragging her neglected children all over town in search of cheap vodka. Well, not often anyway. And the cringiest one either of them have ever come out with was in a very crowded motorway service station toilet. I'd brought the kids into the cubicle with me and, pulling my knickers down, I realized that my period had come upon me all of a sudden. Before I could do anything, DS, 3, in the loudest voice I have ever heard him use, "What's that in your knickers, Mummy? Is it jam?" When I was at uni, a friend of mine had to bring his DS into a lecture, as the childminder had called in sick at the last minute. DS, "Daddy, this is boring. Could we go and do a bit more pooing together instead?" DS, aged 4 at the time, "Mummy, that lady looks like the Joker in Batman. She was wrinkly." He later said, again, DS, "Old people need sticks, DD1, because they are very old and can't walk." Again, DS, in a shop, "Mummy, look at that fat man." I agree, the man was very large, but he said it right next to him and pointed. DD1 on the bus, aged 3 at the time, "That man in front of me smells. He might have trumped and not said excuse me." DD1 in a shopping queue, "That man has a willy, doesn't he, Mummy? And you have a front bottom and big boobies, don't you, Mummy?" DD1 at nursery last week, now aged 4, retold Throga teacher, "My mummy has milk in her boobies. I have the milk in my breakfast, it tastes yummy." God, too many to list them all, but they are the best that come to mind right now. We were sitting next to 2 wig-wearing old ladies in a cafe. Didi piped up very loudly, "Look at the granny's funny hair. Look at that man's hat," full volume DS, whilst pointing at a bloke with an obvious wig. Oh God, my DC have both said so many embarrassing things over the years, it's a wonder I still go out in public. One thing that sticks in my mind was when DS started reception. Didi was already in the same school, and there had been a run of letters asking for money for this, that and the other. It was January, so things were tight, after Christmas, and I was getting fed up of getting these letters, so was moaning to Didi about it. A couple of days later DS came marching out of class, waving a letter above his head and shouting, "Look, Mum, they want more bloody money off us." The letter turned out to be about something completely different. That was mortifying enough, but I was talking to my friend later, who is also a TA in reception, and she told me that when she handed the letters out, DS had shouted, "Oh, I'm getting fed up of this. What do you want money for now?" My friend said that the teacher had to leave the room as she was laughing so much. I've also had the public toilets thing with both of them. Are you doing a wee or a poo, mummy? Why do you have rope coming out of your bits, mummy? Good girl, mummy, along with a round of applause. This was when potty training Dee. And not the DC, so slightly off topic, but DH. Dee and I were in a shop when Dee was about 18 months old. We were trying to look at something and Dee was lying on the floor in front of us tantruming. DH looks down at Dee and says, Dee, get up now, or I'll kick you in the head. Cue a loud tut and a look of total and utter disgust from an old lady stood next to us. DH had meant, if you don't get up I may accidentally kick you in the head. But obviously it didn't come across like that. Part 3 of the most embarrassing things children have said in public. The daughter of a lady I work with caused much mirth in the local Tesco a few years ago. She was 4 at the time. Whilst doing the weekly shop, said daughter disappeared into the next aisle and a cry came up of mummy. I've found your juice. She then appeared from around the corner carrying a bottle of red wine. My friend trying to explain honestly how she was having a baby by donor sperm to her 8-year-old DS. Because it takes girl parts and boy parts to make a baby and I only have girl parts. The next day they are talking to the neighbor man, acquaintance at most, and her DS says, you have a willy, you can help my mum make a baby. Cringe factor. I was sitting in Domino's Pizza with DS14, and he says rather loudly, mummy, has that lady eaten too much pizza? I turned to see a very large lady sitting next to us. He also told a lady in the coupe that he had gone to school in his pajama top, rushed morning where I didn't realize he was wearing vest, PJ t-shirt, school polo and jumper. DS, age 3, on kissing old lady in sitting room of old people's home. Very loudly, core. That prickled. DD at supermarket checkout, loading up her loot. I've got peanuts now. I just need a willy. My DC haven't said anything as funny as this yet. When we went to France for the first time as little kids, my mum made a big point of telling us how French policemen had gums. On the way back to the ferry, we got pulled over for speeding. Cue my brother, 3 years, screaming at the policeman, don't shoot my daddy. DS1, 3 at the time, in our village shop. He saw an old lady and for some reason took a dislike to her, even though she was smiling kindly at him. He pointed his tube of Smarties up at her and started waving them like a wand whilst saying, get back you creepy thingy. I bought a toolkit for DS, 2 years, when we were renovating house, so he could do DIY with daddy. Unfortunately the imitation was a bit too good. Found him banging with hammer, happily saying over and over again, knock knock sure it. Knock knock sure it. Years ago, I was at a wedding in a small country church. There was a little boy there about 2/3, who was fascinated by the cameras everyone had. At the end of the service the official photographer was standing in the aisle waiting to snap the happy couple as they walked out of the church. He was holding one camera, and the other one was hanging over his shoulder. It was a big SLR with a long lens. Small boy gazed admiringly at it for a few seconds, before saying very loudly in impressed tone of voice, you've got a big one. My own, dear DS has been fairly restrained, but I did once take him with me to drop off some cash to a local builder. Very kindly he and his wife asked us in for a cup of tea. So to entertain us DS announced loudly, I've done 2 poos today. It wasn't even true. But as we were potty training at the time, I suppose it was the most impressive feat he could think of to amuse the assembled company. In Lou in Sainsbury's, Didi pipes up in a very loud voice, mummy, why are you wearing a baby nappy? Sanitary towel, from my own childhood. I actually remember this one, shouting across the road on the way to school, at neighbor Susan and her mum. My mum doesn't like the name Susan in a voice. I was very fond of our cat. One day we were on the bus, and I was sitting on mum's lap. The woman in front had a fur collar on her coat. Mum said. I suddenly leaned forward, started stroking the collar, and saying loudly, "Nice pussy." "Ah? Lovely pussy." The woman turned round, irritated and embarrassed, but Mum was laughing too much to stop me. Great thread. DD3, loudly to DH at our local supermarket. "Daddy, put me in the trolley now, or I'll stab you." I have twins, and DS2 wanted to wear dresses like his sister. We explained that boys and men don't. We went to a wedding, got there late, the church was full and everyone was sitting quietly, waiting for the bride to arrive. We hovered at the back, wondering where to sit, when DS pointed down the aisle and shouted, "Look! That man's wearing a dress." It was the vicar. DH has a choice turn of phrase on occasion, and DD is 3 and repeats things verbatim that he says. In a National Trust garden last week, went to the ladies' loos, 5 cubicles occupied with genteel old ladies. DD and I enter the only empty cubicle, whereupon DD recoils in horror, and cries out, "UGH. Yuck. Mummy, someone has turfed one out." I had to laugh and heard more laughter coming from adjacent cubicles. I've just remembered another one, which happened recently. DS aged 5 said in the queue at the chemist's for no apparent reason, and in the most plaintive voice, I have heard him use, "Please mummy, stop drinking so much red wine." Everyone turned round to get a look at the drunken mother. It wouldn't be so bad, but I hardly ever drink. DH took DS swimming recently. After their swim, DH asked DS in the changing room if he needed to go for a wee. He replied very loudly, "No, it's okay daddy. I did a wee in the pool." So, there was the time with the man with dwarfism. DS too shouted, "Look at that man, look at that man," all in earshot of the man, pointing and speaking in a loud voice. Thought that was bad enough. That was until DS1 piped up in all seriousness, "Don't worry DS2, it's just an elf." FFS. Carrot girl, you reminded me, my DD, age 3, used to tantrum regularly if we were on our way home, say from dropping brother at school, or from playgroup etc., and if I picked her up to expedite matters, she would yell at the top of her voice, "This woman's not my mother." Also, on the bus with DS aged 4 who had recently had chicken pox. On gets a hooded youth or about 17, with acne, who sits opposite us, knees touching, you know the seats I mean. "Look mummy, that little boy's had chicken pox too." Going to school, she on scooter, me lagging behind due to only walking. DD, if you moved a bit faster mummy, you could get some of that weight shifted. Thanks, dear. Mine is similar to Lady Blabber's. My youngest, who was 3 at the time, and has the most squeakiest voice which carries for miles, think Alvin the Chipmunk, pipes up on seeing a man with dwarfism, "Mummy, look, look, one of Santa's elves." Remembered another one. Visiting neighbors for first time. Elderly couple, sitting in lounge having a cuppa. Their dog comes in. DS7 pipes up, "Hello doggy, have you just been for AW?" The lady interrupts, "No. Don't say the W word, he'll go mad." QDS, what, wanger. Luckily they saw the funny side. We were at the zoo and I asked the boys where they wanted to go next. They replied the Buggery, meaning Bug House OBV, and ran off going buggery buggery full blast. I was actually quite proud of them. On the receiving end, I was in supermarket, without the kids, and queued up for the loo, can't think why it was so busy. Anyway, there were only 2 cubicles, and when it was my turn I went in and there was the biggest jobby I have ever seen blocking the whole bowl. UGH. Didn't know what to do though, it seemed really childish to come out again, and wait for the other cubicle with all these people waiting etc., so went for it anyway. Yucks, anyway. It would not flush away, so in the end I sidled out and a woman went in with her little daughter. Started washing my hands, still a queue, and the little girl goes really loudly, "Look mummy, that lady has done the most enormous poo." Then I could hear the mum trying to shut her up. Wanted the ground to swallow me up, but also wanted to say loudly, it wasn't me. It was already there, lol, I just slunk out instead. We went to the seaside when our DS was 2. He had trouble pronouncing some words. He said itch for beach. Hence whenever we went near the beach he shouted itch and pointed madly. Women walking by gave us some dirty looks. We were in hysterics. DS1 used to frequently yell help. Help, in public whenever I wanted him to do something which wasn't quite to his liking. I got loads of looks from people, who I'm sure suspected I was trying to kidnap him. He also makes up his own words and was shouting backy backy, but the B sounded more like APO, and my lovely DNS 11 and 13 have taught both boys to shout Buddha at the top of their lungs frequently. I should just stay home. Another public toilet story, 2 cubicles and a queue. DS sits thoughtfully on the loo and listens to the waterfall next door. Core. She's doing loads of wee mum Q sniggers from the queue. Spasmodic silence from the next cubicle. Not what DD, 21 MTHS, said, but did. I was pretending that I understood what the plumber was telling me about why the boiler wasn't working, when Dee Dee scooted round the corner on her trike wearing Mummy's skimpiest G-string proudly on her head, and sat there watching us trying to keep straight faces. What a brilliant thread, I'm crying with laughter as I read. DD 5, at, rubbish, pantomime crowd is subdued and the pantomime dame decides to G us up telling us to wake up and laugh more. DD stands up, and into the silence shouts, in deeply offended voice, but you're not funny, when she was a toddler DH worked away. He also had long black hair, and she once chased a poor emo teenage boy with long black hair, all the way down the main street screeching daddy in a plaintive wail. I was old enough to be his mum, poor boy. A friend told her 3 years old to stop being a baby in the Waitrose queue response. I'm not a ducking baby. I'm a ducking tiger. Oops. On a bus with DS, when he was about 2, the man in front of us was having a very exasperated and repetitive conversation on his phone, the gist of it being that he was going home, not coming back, and that someone else would be over later. Mercifully, he got off the bus a stop before we did, because as we disembarked DS suddenly yelled, I'm going home. I'm not coming back, and Lee's taking over later. My sister, aged 4 at the time, was asked at church, what's your daddy's name? She replied, Uncle Keith. She'd only ever heard my cousins calling my dad by his name. Whilst handing a bottle of wine to a cashier, DS 5 says, Mummy likes alcohol, my mummy's an alcoholic. I would like to point out I rarely drink. In a packed lift with my DDS and DD1, who was about 4 let out a really loud burp. Me, what do you say? Expecting her to say pardon me. DD1, very proudly, Core, that was a good one, wasn't it? Cue lots of look from the people in the lift and me all at my failed attempt at teaching manners. DD2, aged 5, in museum shop, going to pay for her postcard. Very tall, and V obviously transvestite, woman on the till. DD2, excuse me. Woman bends down, smiling, as DD2 is proffering postcard and money. Are you, or did you used to be, a man? DH and I cowered behind the books and didn't hear a reply. DD age 3 to Granny, where is the adult magazine Daddy reads in the toilet? After much embarrassment, all round, DD explains the one with all the Christmas presents in. She had been looking for the Argos catalogue. Haystack, love that one. Reminds me of my friend's sister, who apparently, in the middle of a really long sermon, stood up on the church pew and shouted, shut up, while everyone else was thinking it. I was cut up really badly by a white van driver and blurted, knob sock, and then from the back seat, DD 18 months old, came sock. The relief, partly. Oh, and my friend didn't think she swore much in the car, until someone else hooted their horn, and her son shouted wanger. DD1, 2 at the time going past the cheese counter in Waitrose dash, what's that smell, mummy? Have you done a fart? To the seagulls on the beach. Go away, Mr. Seagull. Go away. Bugger off. Oh yes, the car one's Dee, 3 at the time, and I were watching a lady try to park her car in a smallish space. We were waiting to go past, in summer so all windows open. Dee, oh. My. God. Mummy, you could put a jumbo jet in there, couldn't you? She's taking the piss. Hurry up, would you? Another one. DP was driving and someone tried to cut him up, and then repeatedly acted stupid trying to overtake us. DP just zoomed off, and they got stuck behind another car. Me? Ha ha suckers DD, ya mother duckers. Another one. My DS answered the phone. He was about 7, and shouted down the phone, stupid bloody salespeople. I managed to retrieve the phone, and it was the school nurse wanting to make a home visit. By the way, DS has ADHD. DS has problems pronouncing FS. They come out more like a SL sound. He's only 3. Imagine my mortification when, after being given a flag at a day out and being very excited about it, he runs round our completely surrounded suburban garden yelling mummy flag over and over at the top of his voice. Years ago, I was in Smith's with my every other weekend stepkids. We were looking for presents for DH for Christmas, so it was packed. Stepson, who was about 4 or 5 at the time, spotted a football annual with the players on the front lined up for a free kick, all covering their balls, as they do. He said extremely loudly, "Look why is that man is holding his vagina?" I could only guess he had overheard his mum telling his bigger sisters the proper anatomical name, and thought it applied to lads too, but I nearly died. I've got tears rolling down my face. These just get funnier and funnier. Some have reminded me of a few more of DDS. On a back train heading north to visit family, I rang DH on my mobile, only to hear DD, then 1/2 announce very loudly to a packed train, "Mummy is trying to find Daddy, he'll be in the pub. He's always in the pub drinking too much beer. Mummy can never find him." Cue sympathetic looks all round, and it's not true. Another pretty scary one, at about the same age, in front of MIL, thankfully her, and not my own mum. "Mummy, Daddy doesn't really go to work, you know, he really goes to see other pretty ladies." Poor sod was working his socks off at the time, and when I asked Didi later why she lied about Daddy, she owned up to it being because she thought I would be cross and stop him going to work, as she missed him. No idea where she even got the idea for that one from. This ain't spoken, but the humiliation was there. I was hosting a neighborhood watch scheme in our house, and halfway through my Didi toddled in wearing a pair of my worn knickers on her head, soiled gusset outwards. Friends of my parents were at a nativity play last year to see their grandson, about 4 years old at the time. He had really wanted to play Joseph from the beginning, but had been given the part of the innkeeper. Anyway, he seemed to have gotten over his disappointment. On the night of the play, Joseph and Mary knock on the door of the inn to ask for a room. The innkeeper opened the door and said, at the top of his voice, "Duck off, Joseph. Mummy, I've finished." As she backs out of the toilet into the doctor's waiting room, pooey bottom in the air. Didi, age 2, in shopping center, stops right in front of large man with mop of red hair, beard and glasses, points and says loudly in incredulous voice, "Look, Mummy. What is that animal?" Fortunately, he saw the funny side. Also age 2, meeting my husband's bosses and colleagues for first time at Christmas drinks do, pulls up her top, and says to the general crowd, "Look. I've got tiny nipples. Mummy's got big nipples." Then tries to pull down my lowish cut top to try to demonstrate. Mortified, I hastily try to distract and send her in the direction of snacks, only to turn round a moment later to realize she is now demanding to know the size of everyone else's nipples and attempting to get visual verification. And the old classic, whilst potty training, her walking back through crowded restaurant, with her singing "Mummy did a poo-o." "Well done mummy," accompanied by her clapping me loudly. DS 2.3 did a classic a few months ago. We were in the queue waiting to pay for groceries and the man in front of us farted. Judging by the little startled jerk he did, it was one of those "oops, it slipped out" ones, but it was still rather loud. DS points at his back and says in his loudest toddler voice, "You toot." QJM, wanting to sink into a deep hole in the ground. I distinctly heard several snickers around us. The man turned around with a very red face, looked at DS's extremely happy smile, and said, "I did, little man, sorry." What a lovely way to handle it. I apologized profusely. He waved away my apology and just said, "What can I say? I did kids, eh?" My brother toddled into my mum's Tupperware party, attended by various members of the PTA, wearing a sanitary towel across his face. He loudly proclaimed, "Look mummy, I am a sturgeon." Everyone just carried on examining the plastic, trying to ignore the small boy with a sanitary towel hooked around his ears. It wasn't my child though, they have said some funny things. It was beautiful little Irish girl on a train with her dad with lovely red curls. She was standing up talking to us, we were on the chairs behind and it was before we had kids. She said, "My ma says I have a lovely head of hair." I said, "She's right, you do." She said, "I don't get it from daddy, look at him, his no hair on his head at all." She was right, bald as a coot. The whole carriage could hear this conversation, and poor daddy's head soon matched the color of her hair. My Dee was about 2 at the time. We'd just been shopping at the supermarket, and had just got back to the car. Just before I started packing the shopping away, she said in a very loud voice, "Please don't put me in the boot mummy." Luckily the nearby woman thought it was funny. "Daddy, you're a cook," shouted very loudly in a crowded car park. We had just been discussing the difference between peacocks, male, and peahens, female. So, in her 5-year-old logic, she turns to me and says, "Mummy, you're a hen," and then, because daddy was walking ahead of us, found it necessary to shout the above. We have never been so red-faced as we were that day. 3-year-old DS, looking at a baby in a pram, shouts at me across school playground, "Mummy, can we go home and make a baby?" Lady on bus, "Where's daddy today?" 3-year-old, "He's doing a poo." My poo was a Coke one last time. "Oh look mummy, a pirate man with eye patch walks past." Just remembered another, DD age 2 to the HV on home visit, "Me got poo on mis new jammies. Got poo all over mis bed. Got poo all over mis wall." I and hurriedly explained her obsession with Winnie the Pooh, and her new bedroom makeover, having just moved into her new room to make room for baby DD2. My son, now 18, once loudly shouted out in Dorothy Perkins, "Mew me, you're leaving without paying." I had a pair of sunglasses in my hand and was heading to the shoe section. He has Asperger's in his defense, and he thought I was heading for the exit. Stickler for the rules, my boy. I was followed by the store detective for the rest of my peruse round DP. I've been reading this for so long, all my family have deserted me and gone to bed, and I haven't emptied the washing machine. DD age 3 has managed a couple of great ones recently. We were walking along near our house, and she pointed at this man, and said loudly, "Is that my daddy?" Luckily he laughed. Only a week or so ago, we'd been out on the train, and were walking out of the station, and there was a large, and not terribly attractive woman walking behind us. Diddy looked behind and saw her and said really loudly, "Mummy, there's a monster following us." I pretended I hadn't heard. She also came up with a great non-verbal one in Tesco's. I was looking at something and a young, quite alternative-looking couple of teenagers stood next to us. She pointed at them and they just looked at me with an expression of pure, "Would you look at that?" The girl looked quite hurt and her boyfriend put a protective arm around her, and I scuttled off with my child craning over my arm trying to stare at them. When DS sees women in the street with short hair, he very kindly stops, pokes them and says, "Hello man, And if I dare correct him, no DS, that, SA lady with short hair, no, mummy, it's a Moan. DS, aged about 1 and just starting to name animals, in a cafe with a bit of a rural theme, sees a picture of a chicken, cook. Cook, 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 cook. Cook. Best bit was that I had nipped to the loo, leaving him with my friend, and came back to find all the old dears in the place staring at them in amused horror. Oh, I have just remembered the best one. DDH 3. I was in a restaurant where you went straight into the toilets. Me. Which toilet should we go into, darling? One door has M4, DD, male. Me, yes darling, well done. And F4. DD, in the sweetest little voice, duck. DS is 22 months, and has a habit of shouting cook cook, chocolate, when we are out and he wants a snack. I'm fed up with explaining this one. Also a couple of weeks ago, he asked for more, Jeannie's now, Jeannie being 9-week-old, at the time, DD. I posted this on FB to be told by my, 5 years younger, sister that, I had better not get PG again, as I was stealing all the glory. WTF, it took DH, and I 5 years to conceive DS, and I am the eldest of 4. She on the other hand is on her second marriage, back living with my mum and dad as she cannot afford her mortgage and gets more for renting it out. Anne is 2 years into her nursing training, while her husband doesn't work. Sorry, little rant there, which I needed to get off my chest. I'm loving the duck off ones. I have been telling DH he needs to tone down his language, because I do not want to have to deal with the in public, or with the CM. My friend's DS, aged 3, mummy, when you die, I can go and live with Nana and have sweets. My widowed pal is in rude health, but is now almost suspecting her MIL of some dreadful plot. PMSL at some of these. Always told DD I would explain anything she asked me, thought we had got past the worst relatively unscathed. Age 10, big queue in Sainsbury's. Mum, what's an orgasm? That's what you get for leaving mags with problem pages in lying around. Slightly off topic. DSS 5 to DH as he dried himself after a bath. Dad, your balls look like a dog's. Tonight out for a meal, coming back from the loo with DD 2:9 and walking through the tables. I did poo in a Chinese restaurant. Lovely dear. We went out for a meal a few weeks ago, and the waitress had terrible adult acne. DS asked really loudly, does that lady have chicken pox? On the beach he asked a man, who was rather large, if he had eaten all the pies as he had large boobies. And he didn't like it. My sister used to work at a nursery, and a little girl there was always overdressed, big flouncy dresses, blonde ringlets. She skipped up to my sister one day with her hands behind her back. There's my sister thinking, oh, what an angelic looking child. Isn't she cute? She then announced with a big smile, I've just pissed myself. Even at the advanced age of 10, DS1 still comes out with some crackers. One day we were out and he told his brother, when mum and dad die I'll inherit everything because I'm the oldest. Had to break it to him gently that he was not the bally Duke of Richmond and would be sharing whatever pauper's pittance was left. Another time, he became aware of some news item that totted up the cost of raising a child, however many thousands it was, and asked me rather worriedly, is that a loan or a gift? My eldest DS1 who is 3.5 comes out with some corkers. He is old before his time, bless him. Went to Tesco's loos the other week. As soon as he sees Tesco's it's need a wee. So we go to the loos and I think I may as well go as was going to be in town for some time. Anyway he had his wee, then was waiting for me and shouted loudly, DS1 you have poo. Me no, just a wee. DS1 no you poo. I was mortified. Another time, when I was part-time at work, I went to pick DS1 up from preschool in car. We got home to DH, and DS2, too, and DS1 runs into house saying mummy pushed me out of car. I did no such thing in January. The kid stayed with my dad for the weekend and he told my dad that daddy had fallen down the stairs with him and cut his head. Also he is currently in Scotland with MIL for 2 weeks, and as she has a small holding of animals including hens, ducks, sheep etc. etc. He goes into the pen every morning with his overalls and wellies on and says, "Hello ladies," while he collects the eggs, and then when he leaves he says, "Thank you ladies." When my DS was 2 he couldn't say the L in clock. We were visiting a school at the time, and of course in every room there was a clock. He proudly pointed at every one and said really loudly, "Clock." I kept saying tick-tock, but he kept saying the same word. Afterwards the teacher said that his speech was really good. I nearly wet myself. Another classic is that when I'm driving and have near misses I say Jesus. When we were at my Sil's church wedding, my DS asked his uncle who the man on the cross was. Of course he replied that it was Jesus. My DS turned to DH and said in hushed and shocked tones, "Uncle James just said Jesus." Again, I had to stop myself from laughing, as did most of the people in the pews around us. Kids got to love them. DS1 has a fascination with every car there is. Health visitor came earlier this week for 2 years and 3 years checks on kids. Jack staring out the window at her car and proceeds to shout to her, "Let me look at your fadge." Fadge aka badge. He wanted to know what make her car was. Oh God, it was plain as day, and HV just laughed. On a packed train my DS, age 3, shouted, "There are 3 really bad things you should never say, mummy." Everyone turned and listened, so I muttered, "Then don't say them." He ignored me and shouted, "They are stupid." "Shut up," I breathed a sigh of relief, and off. Blush had to sit there for another 20 agonizing minutes. My 8 years old watched 40 years old me get out of the shower and then chirpily said, "Mummy, do you know, you've got a bottom like grandma's." Still traumatized, nearly 5 years later. When DD1 was about 4 we were walking down the road towards a lady coming in the opposite direction. The lady was of a large frame, and had long blonde hair, and very heavy makeup. Just as we got up to the lady my DD shouted out really loudly, "Mummy, is that a man?" Blush, I just kept walking, but a little faster grin. I once took my 3-year-old to the opticians to get her glasses adjusted. The lady doing it had the worst fake 10 ever. The lady just nipped behind where we were waiting to use a machine, and my daughter shouted, "Where's that orange lady gone?" Lots of shoulder shaking. I couldn't look her in the eye when she reappeared with the glasses. Love this thread. Both of these were my middle child, age about 2. I had bought his big sister some Barbies, and found it hard to get man dolls. So in desperation, I bought a talking Regan and talking George Bush doll since they were cheap and I figured they would make okay dad dolls. Only my son became weirdly attached to the Bush doll and insisted on bringing it everywhere we went, naked. He would hold it up proudly to strangers and press a button to make it talk. It was a great relief when he stopped talking. Second thing, he had a toy frog that he was very fond of. His granda asked him what the froggy was called, and DS thought about it for a minute, then said, "Cunt." His name Cunt. For some reason this was all said with a very Germanic pronunciation. Granda said weakly, "Do you mean Kermit?" And we all looked at DS hopefully. "No, not Kermit, Cunt," he told us determinedly. And so it was, and Cunt the frog got hidden whenever anyone came over from then on. A few years ago, we went to an Indian restaurant with some of DH's friends and DC. After we finished, friends DS, aged about 7, ordered an ice cream in the shape of a duck called a quacky. Just as the waiter was bringing it over he decides to shout in his loudest voice, "Mum, is this called a quacky? Cause it rhymes with P***key. Blush. Friend swore she had never used that word before and still to this day does not know where he picked it up from. DS1 was 3 and sat in the seat of a supermarket trolley. We were in the queue and he started to talk to the lady next to us in a wheelchair. "I've got one of those," he tells her, pointing at her wheelchair. "Have you?" She says kindly, "What's wrong with your legs then?" I had to explain he meant a pushchair, and there was nothing wrong with his legs other than he was a runner, and so had to be strapped into something for his own safety. DS2 likes repeating phrases. I was slightly shocked when he said "fuck Teddy Gilbert" over and over. When I asked where he heard that naughty word, he told me from Daddy. Cue me having a right go at DP, who claimed he'd never said fuck in front of DS2. That night, whilst reading DS2 a bedtime story, it turns out he was actually saying "smack Teddy Gilbert" from The Little Princess. I'm not sure whether I should explain to nursery. We were staying in a posh hotel in Scotland, with famous golf course, and DH had popped off to the loo while we waited in reception. DS aged 3 was looking around for him and suddenly pointed and shouted "Daddy" really loudly at a man walking towards us. It was actually the golfer Colin Montgomery, who legged it out of the hotel very quickly, while I turned crimson and everyone else in the reception area wet themselves. DS also enjoys asking me if the person on the checkout is a man or a woman. Very loudly. Every time we go to the supermarket. Blush. My DN3 declined the offer of more food at her GM's house by saying, "Mummy says I'm not to have that, otherwise I'll get fat like you." Shock. My sis's MIL, a typically Italian nonna who cooks mounds of food and is admittedly rather large, didn't speak to her for weeks. I think I may have posted this before, and although it was 14 years ago, when eldest Didi was 3, I still feel slight surge of panic when behind a larger lady in a queue. Didi1 said in a very loud voice, as we queued in Safeway, "Does that lady in front of us have a baby in her tummy? Or does she just eat lots of big dinners?" Cue a ripple of snickering, me and the lady in question going scarlet, and a strong urge to crawl into a hole and never come out, having had 3 more DCS since then. There have been plenty more, but that remains the most mortifying in the zoo house. On the very crowded beach last week, Didi said while running over towards me, "Mummy, I just did a wee in that puddle. Tide was coming in, thank God." Cue me looking completely mortified. I didn't know where to look. Blush. When I was 3/4, I fell over in my grandparents' garden and grazed my face. I was on the bus and a lady said to me, "What a pretty girl you are, but what have you done to your lovely face?" Me, all big brown eyes and blonde ringlets, "My mammy did it." Blush. My poor mammy nearly dislocated my shoulder dragging me off the bus. DS, when he was about 2.5, as my DH put him in the trolley at Asda, shouted, "New daddy don't too wooch me." Ger pretended I wasn't with them. A friend of mine was at Sainsbury's with her DS age 3 who suddenly shouted, "Mummy, Jesus is alive. Ooh, can we have some dunkers?" Grin. Oh, and my cousin, 20 and should really know better, had taught my DS to say "boo ya" when he's pleased with himself about something. Thank you for watching. Tell us your stories of the worst way you have been embarrassed in public. Before you go, please like, subscribe, and click the notification button to be notified about more daily uploads. Hope you enjoyed today's video.